I'm not a great one for favourite verses. So I'm not going to talk about what I'd call a favourite verse, because for me it changes so often. I want to talk about a verse that's probably had more influence on my life than any other I can think of. I'll tell you about it, and I'll tell you the story about it. Now, I was never much for listening to sermons. No, that was when I was a youngster, that is. I would listen to them avidly now, especially if I'm preaching. But I never bothered. It wasn't that I didn't like sermons, it was just, I just used to, well, I felt they were just a gap between a couple of hymns. So I'd sit in church with a group of young people, and a crowd of us all sitting together. We joined in the singing, we loved the services, we followed the readings in our Bibles. That was the tradition in our church. And I would sit in quietly as the sermon went on. I don't know what it was about. And suddenly, now I'm not given to voices from heaven or visions or dreams very much. But suddenly, the vicar who was preaching quoted a verse from Scripture. And at that moment, it was, for me, it was as if I was the only person in the church. And these were the words. Jesus said, "You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you." And it was almost a shock to hear those words as if they were addressed to me. Well, the young people after church, we went on our usual walk around the town, and we enjoyed one another's company. I went home. Mum and Dad had gone to bed by then, and whether I woke them up, I don't know, but I disturbed them, and I said, "Guess what? I think I'm going to be a minister." We didn't talk about priests or deacons. I didn't know one from another. "I think I'm going to be a minister." And they said, "Well, yeah, but not in our family. We haven't got anything like that going on. So don't be too disappointed." But, well, in effect, it's not going to happen. And I thought, yeah, you're probably right, and I'm quite content with that. I didn't want to be a minister. I'd got all kinds of dreams and plans about being an engineer, and I really wanted to be an engineer, so I left it at that. And then a bit later on, I kept niggling at me, so I went to the vicar, the one who'd preached, and I said to him, "This is what happened. What does this mean?" And he said, "Well, we must find out." He had a favourite idea. He said, "When you think it might be something special, you push a few doors and see which ones open. And if they all shut, then maybe that's a good answer, that's a good response." So he said, "I think we'll push a few doors and see whether any of them open." And he sent me off to be interviewed by somebody, just to chat, just talk about it. I remember I arrived at this fellow's office in the middle of an air raid. This was in London, in the Blitz. And as we were beginning to speak, there was a lot of noise going on, crowds and bangs and things going on. At one point, there was a loud crash. We both dived under his desk. It was hard to be very dignified sitting under someone's desk. And we had a good long conversation. At the end of it, he said, "I think you should probably go home and be a good engineer." So I said, "Thank you very much." And I went home and I told the vicar. And he said, "Well, now we'll push a few more doors." And so he did. And he said, "Well, whatever else happens, even if this doesn't come to anything, you've got to get your matriculation, because you can't do anything. You can't get into a university without matriculation." And I certainly didn't have matriculation. That's really finishing grade 12. We're finishing high school. war had intervened. So I started studying, and he said, one of the things you're going to need if you're going to be ordained, you're going to have to learn Greek. And he said, I'll teach you. Now that dear man came round to our house once a week for a whole evening, every week, to teach me Greek. And, well, there was a long story. It has to be shortened because this goes on indefinitely, but I was getting into my studies, still not knowing if anything would come of it, and I was interrupted. I was called into the army. And I frankly thought that maybe by the end of my time in the army I might have other ideas. But it persisted. I came home, I finished my matriculation, went into university. This is leaping along pretty rapidly. Came the day when, in St. Paul's Cathedral in London, I was to be made a deacon. And there were about 30 or so other men, all men of course, to be ordained deacon, and just as many to be ordained priest. It was a big crowd. And I sat there we all felt very self-conscious. We got our clerical collars on for the first time, and we thought we'd choke. And the service proceeded. The sermon began. My text is from John's Gospel, chapter 15, verse 16. You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you. That was a shock. And I realized then that I was in exactly the right place as God meant me to be. After that, I was ordained a priest. The first question when you're ordained a priest, or when you're made a deacon, or when you're consecrated a bishop, the first question is, do you believe you are called by God? Not do you think you'll be good at it, or is this something you rather fancy, but do you believe you're called by God? And I could say, I might even wish it were different, but yes, you have not chosen me, I have chosen you. And that has echoed down through my life when sometimes I won't say I've ever wanted to walk away from the ministry, but when it's been getting rough and, why do I do this? Well, the simple reason is I've chosen you. And that's kept me going. So I share it with you and just warn you, pay attention. Who knows when God speaks? Sometimes in a throwaway remark in a sermon, God says something. Now I listen avidly because who knows? God may speak.
My command is this: love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit. Fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love each other.